So this is me sitting down now. I have to look up to the land race. The thing is huge. It really doesn't do much justice, the camera really. I mean, my hand is out. You can just see it would take 3, maybe even 4 people to wrap our hands around it, to lock arms. It's going to be a monster if these buds get huge. We're going to have to wait and see. It looks like the fast buds, though, is definitely getting bigger. So you can see this one was ahead, but now we've got these fast buds. They're looking really good. That's that GG Sherbert. Turtle platform is all sealed up, looking good. That looks like Scooter down there. And there's Cooter right there. What's up, Coot? Y'all waiting on a worm, aren't you? You see me, don't you? Yeah, you do. Watch this. Watch me stick my finger down here. He can come up here and try and snatch. He thinks it's a worm. I think he's learning it. Oh, nope. He's not learning. He's not learning. What do you think, Coot? There's a tiger snail. That's pretty cool. I haven't seen him in a while. Guess it's time to feed. Y'all ready to eat, huh? Alright, let me get some food over here. I use this Blue Ridge. They're out of North Carolina, which is just a state over from me, or down. But high quality koi food. It's got all the minerals and food we need for these guys. They love them. Fish, goldfish love them. So throw a couple over there for. I see Pooter over there. See his head sticking out. He might come on out when he sees that food. See if we can get him to come on. He'll see it. Keep an eye out. See if he comes out. There he is. Big boy. So I don't know if I've told you how many gallons is in this thing, but there's an estimated 200 to 225 with the creek and everything. So I'm guessing 2 to 250. I didn't really measure. We do have room to put another probably, I don't know, there's at least 60, 70 gallons of extra space we can go. That's probably 6, 7 inches of room there from the water line to the top of that exit hole there. You can see how much space we have. So we can go all the way up to that spot there. And the reason that spot is that's almost just below where our soil line is. So where the pond, if you come down here, the pond is lower. So this is the pond area, then the water is way down here. So you can see that the pond is the lowest point of the whole bed. And then we come up. See, I'm going to sit down and roll around here in my chair So everything then comes up. Soil starts at the top of the pond. So when you come across here, this is where that soil line, and then it gradually comes on up. It's hard to see on the camera, but there is a 1-inch slope on the whole bed, basically on the floor. So the floor is not flat, it does slope down, all coming down to this way. So then when I put the bed down, it's 12 foot long by 9.5 foot wide. You can go on my Instagram, and you'd have to scroll way down, but you definitely have to take some time. But you can actually see I do updates, and you can actually see me build this thing and how it's built. From the time I lay the pea gravel, I build the creek, well, I build the pond first, and then I attach the creek. The whole thing took 10 months to build, off and on. Hurt my back one time, so I took a few weeks off. But a lot of that time was just sitting in here looking at it and studying it, and basically trying to figure out how I wanted everything to flow, where I wanted the creek to go, how the pockets and how the creek connects. So the pockets have these corners. Alright, so this soil pocket has this bend and this bend. This soil pocket has this bend, this straightaway, and then this bend. The up there where the Trinity skunks, you can see it S's through here. It bends right through there. So each one of those bends in the creek that connect, this over here, this bend here. So, and the reason, my thought process behind that is that water is flowing and it's hitting in these bends. So right here where the water flows through, I set this rock in there, and that rock slows that water way down. It hits, it splits, it comes around this way, so I get that water coming up over here, then it comes through here. It's very slow through here. So this is where I'm going to get that grass and algae growth, right through here. And these corners is where that water hits that edge, and then that sand, silt, and clay wick it up from here and wick it up over the wall, and then that sand, silt, clay, and organic matter is then we extend that sand, silt, and clay that come up out of the creek up over top of the rock. Then we place moss on top of the rock, and then extend that sand, silt, and clay over top of our soil layer underneath this mulch. So underneath the mulch layer, which the mulch layer now is about that thick, but we'll just constantly build on top. Underneath of this is where that sand, silt, clay, and organic matter that's over here continues over top of the soil, which that then you can stick your finger down there, and I can feel the sand, silt, and clay. I can feel it's wet. I can feel the moisture. And it stays wet all the time, and that's what we want. But what it doesn't do is overload. So the sand, silt, and clay doesn't just keep sucking it and sucking it and sucking. What it does is it gets to a certain point of retention, and then it releases the rest. So it'll only hold so much before it fills up, and then it just doesn't hold anymore. But it holds it consistent. And that's the whole key to how these plants want to grow, is that they need consistency. And it's really not the plant, it's really the microbiology that needs this water in the soil. So underneath that mulch layer, I want this duff in here to be kind of dry. So this is my dry back zone in here. If I want to dry back, I'm drying back the top duff here. This is where all the critters and everything are breaking. They don't like a lot of water. But what does like a lot of water and needs that water is just underneath this duff. They need that moisture. So I'm going to show you. I'm just going to Not really going to matter much if I just dig a little hole. And that is more, I can feel it. I can feel this top duff is dry, but I can see and feel that that soil right down there is moist. You can see the sand, you can see the clay, the silt, it's shiny. That's the moisture retention that we're looking for. And all our critters stay up here on top and all this stuff, mulch. Continue to break this stuff down into that moisture, where then the next stage, so the ants and the slugs and all the critters eat this stuff down, break that down into the next layer, and then down to the next layer. That's where the moisture starts, and that's where all the microbiology, that's where all the nematodes and the all those things in the soil food web. So it's that web, that food web, the soil food web. And if you're interested in that, you can look into Dr. Elaine Ingham and the soil food web. It's very interesting, and I promise you, you will end up going down a rabbit hole or a wormhole that you'll never finish. It's a lifelong journey. And it's a very interesting one because you're learning about nature. And it's how nature works. And if we can know how nature works, then we can pretty much do anything we want once we figure out the basics. So the basics, and then we become a steward after that. I don't need to know all the functions of that, what's going on in there. And I'll never know. If the science figures it out, good on them, and they can tell us, but I'm not going to be the one to be in a laboratory researching and under a microscope, because that's just not me. I'll leave that up to people who are smarter than me, but I will take their information and use it to the best of my ability, and then we can create things like this with just the basics. Once we get to a certain point, so I started with a 30-gallon grassroots fabric pot, and then I went to a 4x4, and then I found Layton's horizontal system, and this was just all through research just on YouTube. I found the horizontal, and I was like, wow, it just made so much sense to me. When I heard it, I was like, yes, it's the earth. When I stick a shovel down in the ground, I see layers. I don't see perlite. I don't see peat moss. I don't see cocoa. I don't see any of these things. I see sand, silt, clay, organic matter. I see, the most important thing, I believe, is the clay. I think people miss out on the clay. The clay is extremely important. I don't care where you go on the planet, there's a type of clay in the soil. You know, it has to be there. And in order to get regeneration, the clay particle has to be mixed in with the sand and the silt and the organic matter. This is why it's sand, silt, clay. These are the basics of soil. It's what soil is. And if you don't have it, if all we have is cocoa and sphagnum peat moss, you don't have the clays, you don't have the silts, you don't have the sands, you don't have all this potential homes for the biology, the food for the biology to break down. So if we don't have this is why we have to add amendments to these things. So if we have the cocoa, or if we're growing in perlite, or peat moss, sphagnum, and all that stuff, bag soil, if it doesn't have, sand, silt, clay, then you're going to have to amend it. You're going to have to put elements in there for the microorganisms to break down, like kelp meal, crab meal, bone meal, fish meal, all these different meals, all these different things that I don't have on my property. But for some reason, when I plant these plants outside, I don't need to put all that stuff in there. I just need to feed the soil. I just give it FAA, some JMS, and we're off to the races. I don't need to add kelp meal. I don't need to add, these things help and they work and they're great. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying in this system, I'm trying to do this with only the things I get here on my property, minus a few. I'm not saying I don't buy anything, because I do buy stuff. I buy the EM1. I think is extremely important. This stuff is just biology. And then everything else is basically what we do. We do the FPE, fermented plant extract. That's cannabis fermented plant. It's just leaves from the bed, breaking down in rainwater, some molasses, and some EM1. Oh, and I had some lab in there as well, mixed with the EM1. And this has been here since 23, 2 years. I've just been adding to this. And when I pour it out, if I release that right now, it stinks. I mean, we don't want to do it. It does stink. When we add that to the soil, it's just a little bit into a gallon of water. We water it back in. It's just watering back in exactly what we took. It's just broken down, basically fermented down to liquid form. So it's available to the plants immediately. Available to the soil immediately. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to minimize what we have to purchase. So now that I've spent a ton of money on building this thing and getting the room up, from here on out, I hope that I don't have to spend any money. You know, that's the whole point of this. Like, I want to be able to grow. I mean, I need power, you know, but other than that, we can grow year round as long as we have the power. Yeah, that's really it. We need electricity to run the lights, to run the AC. You know, outdoors we really don't need electricity other than the pump that we would need for the water. But if we were doing something like this outside, we would dig this right into the ground. And this would be, I would just basically build the creek in the ground and then use sand, silt, and clay from the reservoir to do what I did here. So all of this you see would just be sunk in the ground outside. And that's how it works. It's basically, I mimicked nature the best I could, and then followed her lead with the water situation. It took 7 different tries for me to get this right. I sucked this stuff out of here 7 times with a shot vac because I kept getting too much water in this hole here. This is our reservoir hole, basically. So the hole, like I said, everything slopes down to this hole here, and if we start getting water in this hole, which we will once we cut the plants, or until we get enough roots of other plants in here that are sucking up as much water as these other plants. But once we cut these plants and remove them, all that water gets released down to the bottom and will fill up our hole, which isn't a big deal. It's what it's supposed to do. It's to keep the soil from going anaerobic. We don't want the soil layer sitting in water. You know, so it's our bedrock, and then we have sand, silt, and clay, then we have our soil, then we have more sand, silt, and clay, then we have our mulch. So those are our horizontal methods, our layers, and that's how the bed is set up. Creek runs through the middle. Underneath the creek, there are hole pockets for the roots to grow underneath the creek. So everything connects underneath the creek. Now there is concrete. If you go back and look in the Instagram, I did concrete a lot of the corners, especially on this end. There's a lot of concrete, so there's not too many roots that can go in this way because there's a lot of concrete through here holding that creek together. But around the edges where the curves are, there are hole pockets where there's just sand, silt, and clay where roots can grow to and grow underneath and connect to the center. So the roots can go through and under the creek system in certain places. And that helps because the more mass we have, the easier and healthier it'll be. I just wanted to recreate outdoors as best we could. Once we give it the water source and figure out how to regulate that water through that sand, silt, and clay in those corners, and that's where that water is being wicked up, in those corners. And then we remove the sand, silt, and clay from the spots where we don't want it wicking up because it'll wick up too much. So just in the corners is where it's being wicked up into the soil pockets. And that's all we need. Once that one little line, see, I had it all connected going in, and that was too much. I figured out that you only needed one spot really connecting, and that one spot will wick and continue to wick all the way through. So that was the trick. It took me 7 times to figure it out. I sucked all that stuff out with a shot vac. Told my wife I was about ready to give up, and then I went down to the reservoir, to the creek there, and I had a light bulb moment when I was sitting there looking at the creek and how it was clean in the center of the creek and not on the edges. And that led me to removing the organic matter from the center of the creek and realizing that it was the organic matter in that sand and silt that was wicking so much water. And I just removed it from the center and added that organic matter to the spots where I wanted it to wick, and that was it. That's how we regulate the amount of water that comes in to our soil pockets, by removing it where we don't want it to wick up. Like over here, we don't have it up on those rocks there. We just have it right through here in this corner here, and it wicks, stays moist all the time, and then it goes up underneath that and underneath the duff layer, underneath that mulch layer, and into where those microbes need that water all the time. So we have aquatic biology mixing with terrestrial, and we get the best of both worlds. And as you can see, everything seems to love it. So I appreciate everybody following along, and we're at day 28 of flower. So we're probably most of these plants will end up going, 70 days, 75 days, probably somewhere around in there. So we still got a ways to go. Until then, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.